the guardrails of the future will be software-driven. And with that, we go to the gentleman from California, my colleague, Mr. Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Issa and Ranking Member Johnson, for holding this important hearing. As a recovering computer science major, I am enthralled with AI, and I believe it has and will continue to revolutionize society. It can also cause us harm, and it creates all sorts of unanswered questions. So I'd like to walk through some examples so that the American public and I can better understand how artificial intelligence interacts with copyright. I'd like to ask Mr. Damel this example. Let's say I create a generative AI internet application related to music. I do it for commercial purposes. And to train it, I scrape the entire internet of all songs, including every one of Taylor Swift's copyrighted songs, without her permission. Your view is I wouldn't have to compensate her in any way, is that right?
So I think it would very much depend on the particular way in which you train the AI models. Not all AI models are constructed the same way. Some are constructed in ways that might very well exceed the bounds of fair use. And so it's inevitably going to be a case-by-case determination of whether a particular model is going to exceed those bounds or not.
Let's just use ChatGPT's model.
So in an instance where what you have done is extract unprotectable facts from any copyrighted work, so stepping aside and generalizing this point to any kind of work, if what you've done is extract unprotectable facts from those works and then use those facts to generate a new work, then under well-established principles of copyright law, that is not infringement.
I'm not even about generating anymore, I'm just about training the model.
Just on the training side, if that's all that happens, then under a long line of cases that I've laid out in my written testimony, that is fair use.
But to train the model, you need to actually download the Taylor Swift songs.
That's correct. That's correct.
You view that as fair use?
That would be fair use. The premise of any fair use case is going to be...
So internet applications like YouTube pay a licensing fee to Taylor Swift when they download her songs. What is the difference?
Well, the difference would be in those instances, what they're doing is they're taking the work and then they're taking that work and they're streaming it to end users. So that's a public performance of her work.
So let's say ChatGPT lets you just put out Taylor Swift lyrics. What's the difference?
Yeah, I think that would be that might be an issue that exceeds the bounds of fair use, where you're
now let's say I take my model and I generate a new song similar to a Taylor Swift song in terms of lyrics. Is that a copyright infringement?
That's correct, Congressman.
It would be infringement.
It would not be infringement.
It would not be infringement.
Because one of the basic principles of the Copyright Act, which I discussed earlier, is replicating somebody's style, writing a song. If I were to write a song in the style of Taylor Swift, I would not be committing copyright infringement. That's one of the founding precepts of the copyright law.
Now, as you know, voice cannot be copyrighted, but let's say my model also generates voice very similar to Taylor Swift, and I have this brand new song similar to Taylor Swift's voice, similar to her lyrics. You believe that that would not be copyright infringement?
I think you would have to look at other bodies of law to determine whether that would be illegal. I think as a matter of copyright law, and just the basic principles of copyright law, that would not be copyright infringement, which is not to say it's not concerning for other reasons, but in looking at the copyright law itself, that's not.
And then finally with that, in fact, you believe I could then copyright this Taylor Swift-like song with voice like Taylor Swift that I generated by scraping the internet with Taylor Swift copyrighted songs that I didn't pay her for, right?
I don't know that that would necessarily be the case, and certainly, as we were discussing earlier, the Copyright Office has taken the view that AI-generated works like that may not be subject to copyright protection at all.
Okay, thank you. So my remaining time, I have a question for Professor Callison-Birch about disclosure, and Representative Natalie asked about this. Many creators already use AI, right, in their creative works. I mean, there's a whole bunch of algorithms that make your songs sound better. They don't disclose that. Like, how would you even define what kinds of AI they need to disclose that help them with their particular creative work?
That's a great question. If you'll indulge me, I want to answer your question to Sai as well. So that your question about if I download Taylor Swift's songs and I learn from it could be equally well posed to a teenage pop star who's learning how to sing. So if that person learned from Taylor Swift, the decision of whether or not they're violating copyright is not at the time when they're listening to the songs and learning to perform music. It's when they release an album and whether that album is sufficiently similar to Taylor Swift's song. So if we release, instead of Taylor's version, we release ChatGPT's version of an album, that's infringement, but the learning from it is not. In terms of the disclosure of use of copyrighted, of generative AI in materials, I think there's an interesting ill-advised guidance from the Copyright Office that works that involve substantive use of generative AI are not copyrightable at the moment. I believe that AI is going to be used in a collaborative way with humans, and the human using it deserves that copyright. Whether or not they acknowledge it, I think, depends on the use of it. So there was a law passed that political ads must disclose if they're using generative AI to create images of politicians. That seems like a very valid case to disclose. If I'm creating a comic book, it seems less high stakes, so probably not necessary.
Thank you. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. We now go to the